What if I told you that every single day you're being manipulated by the people around you, and you don't even realize it? It's a chilling thought, isn't it? The idea that someone could be influencing your thoughts, feelings, and actions without your knowledge or consent is a disturbing one. And yet, it's a reality that we all face, often without even realizing it. In fact, research has shown that manipulation is more common than we think, and it's not just limited to romantic relationships or workplace dynamics. A study conducted by Dr. Robert Cialdini, a renowned psychologist at Arizona State University, found that people are more likely to be influenced by subtle cues and suggestions than they are by overt persuasion. This is because our brains are wired to respond to certain triggers and patterns, which can be exploited by manipulative individuals to get what they want. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who are more empathetic and cooperative are also more vulnerable to manipulation. This is because they tend to trust others more easily and are more willing to help, which can be exploited by manipulative individuals. For example, Dr. Daniel Batson, a psychologist at the University of Kansas, conducted a study in which participants were asked to help someone in need, and found that those who were more empathetic were more likely to do so, even if it meant sacrificing their own interests. This highlights the importance of being aware of our own emotional vulnerabilities and taking steps to protect ourselves from manipulation. But how do we do that? How can we spot manipulation when it's happening? And what can we do to stop it? To answer these questions, we need to take a closer look at the psychology of manipulation and the tactics that manipulative individuals use to get what they want. Manipulation is a subtle and insidious thing, and it can be difficult to recognize when it's happening. But by understanding the underlying psychology and being aware of the signs, we can start to protect ourselves and take back control. One of the key things to understand about manipulation is that it's often rooted in a deep-seated need for control and power. Manipulative individuals often use tactics like guilt-tripping, gaslighting, and emotional blackmail to get what they want, and they can be very skilled at making their victims feel responsible for their emotions and actions. For example, a manipulative partner might make their significant other feel guilty for not spending enough time with them, or a manipulative colleague might make their coworker feel responsible for their mistakes. But how do we recognize when someone is using these tactics on us? According to Dr. George Simon, a psychologist at the University of Arkansas, one of the key signs of manipulation is when someone is consistently inconsistent in their words and actions. If someone is always changing their story or blaming others for their mistakes, it may be a sign that they're trying to manipulate you. Another sign of manipulation is when someone is using emotional appeals to get what they want. This can be particularly effective because it taps into our emotional vulnerabilities and can be very persuasive. For example, a manipulative friend might use emotional appeals to get you to lend them money or do them a favor, even if it's not in your best interests. But how can we resist these emotional appeals and make rational decisions instead? According to Dr. Timothy Wilson, a psychologist at the University of Virginia, one of the key things we can do is to practice self-reflection and self-awareness. By taking the time to reflect on our own thoughts and feelings, we can start to recognize when someone is trying to manipulate us and take steps to protect ourselves. For instance, we can ask ourselves questions like, what are this person's motivations? Or is this request reasonable? To help us make more informed decisions. It's also important to understand that manipulation can be incredibly subtle, and it's not always easy to recognize when it's happening. Manipulative individuals often use very subtle tactics, like mirroring body language, to build rapport and establish trust. And once they've established that trust, they can start to use more overt tactics to get what they want. For example, a manipulative salesperson might use mirroring to build rapport with a customer, and then use high-pressure sales tactics to get them to make a purchase. But how can we spot these subtle tactics and protect ourselves from them? One of the key things we can do is to pay attention to our own intuition and instincts. If something feels off or doesn't feel right, it's okay to trust our instincts and take a step back. We can also take the time to educate ourselves about the tactics that manipulative individuals use, so we can recognize them when they're happening. By understanding the psychology of manipulation and being aware of the signs, we can start to take back control and protect ourselves from being exploited. It's a complex and nuanced topic, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution. But by being aware of our own emotional vulnerabilities and taking steps to protect ourselves, we can start to build stronger, healthier relationships and make more informed decisions. And that's exactly what we'll be exploring in the second half of this video, as we dive deeper into the 6 signs that you're being manipulated and what you can do to stop it, including the importance of setting boundaries, practicing assertive communication, and seeking support from trusted friends and family members, and how these strategies can help us. Now that we've explored the basics of manipulation and how it can affect our daily lives, let's dive deeper into the signs that indicate you're being manipulated. One of the most common signs is when someone uses emotional blackmail to get what they want from you. This can be as subtle as making you feel guilty for not doing something, or as overt as threatening to harm themselves if you don't comply with their demands. A study by researcher Dr. Harriet Breaker found that people who use emotional blackmail often have a deep-seated need for control and will stop at nothing to get it. For example, imagine a friend who constantly calls you and says they're feeling down and that you're the only one who can cheer them up. At first, you might feel sympathetic and want to help, but over time, you start to feel drained and resentful. That's because your friend is using emotional blackmail to get attention and sympathy from you. Another sign of manipulation is when someone uses gaslighting tactics to make you doubt your own perceptions or sanity. This can be incredibly damaging, as it can make you feel like you're losing your grip on reality. A study by researcher Dr. Gregory Bateson found that gaslighting is often used in abusive relationships, where one partner will deny or distort reality to gain power and control over the other. For instance, imagine a partner who consistently denies saying something, even when you know they did, or who tells you that you're overreacting or being too sensitive. This can be incredibly confusing and disorienting, and can make you start to doubt your own memories and experiences. So, how can you spot manipulation and protect yourself from it? One practical step you can take is to pay attention to how you feel when you're around the person who's manipulating you. Do you feel drained, anxious, or resentful? Do you feel like you're walking on eggshells, never knowing what will trigger their anger or disappointment? If so, it may be a sign that you're being manipulated. Another step is to set clear boundaries and communicate them assertively. This means being direct and clear about what you will and won't tolerate, and being willing to enforce those boundaries if necessary. For example, if someone is constantly calling or texting you and expecting an immediate response, you can tell them that you're only available to talk at certain times of the day, and that you need some space and time to yourself. It's also important to develop a sense of self-awareness and self-confidence, so that you're not vulnerable to manipulation in the first place. This means being aware of your own strengths and weaknesses and being confident in your own worth and value. When you have a strong sense of self, you're less likely to be swayed by someone else's opinions or demands, and you're more likely to stand up for yourself and assert your own needs and boundaries. For instance, imagine a coworker who tries to undermine your ideas and make you feel incompetent. If you have a strong sense of self, you can confidently assert your own abilities and contributions and refuse to be intimidated or belittled. In addition to these steps, it's also important to be aware of the ways in which manipulation can be subtle and insidious. Sometimes, manipulation can be disguised as concern or helpfulness, but it's actually just a way of controlling or exploiting you. For example, imagine a friend who offers to help you with a task, but then becomes overly critical or controlling, telling you that you're not doing it right or that you're not good enough. This can be a sign of manipulation, as the person is using their supposed helpfulness as a way of gaining power and control over you. To illustrate this point, let's consider a real-life example. Imagine a romantic partner who is always making jokes about your appearance or your clothes. At first, you might laugh it off and think it's just a harmless joke, but over time, you start to feel self-conscious and insecure. This is a classic example of manipulation, as the partner is using humor to undermine your confidence and make you more dependent on them. By being aware of this tactic, you can take steps to protect yourself and maintain your self-confidence. In conclusion, manipulation is a complex and subtle phenomenon that can be difficult to recognize, but by being aware of the signs and taking practical steps to protect yourself, you can avoid being manipulated and maintain your own autonomy and agency. Remember, manipulation is not just about overt control or coercion, but also about subtle influence and persuasion. By being aware of these dynamics and taking steps to protect yourself, you can build stronger, healthier relationships and live a more authentic, empowered life. If this helped you see yourself differently, subscribe. I post new psychology insights every single day. And if you want to go even deeper, check the link in the description for the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. It changed how millions of people think and act.